here today with the incredible Lucrezia. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
And we are here to talk about all things legal for your blog and for your business, because this is one of those areas that, like, we start our blogs and we just throw caution to the wind, and then somebody says, like, oh, I got the big S word, I got sued, or like they got into some kind of trouble, and then suddenly it's like a panic of like running around chasing, like, what do I need to protect myself? So let's prevent that from happening.
So let me state this. This is a disclaimer. So before we start, and we go, we dive into all the legal things that we will address today. I just want to make sure that we all know that today is just, this chat doesn't constitute legal advice. So even if I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyers here today. Yes, all the information, all the tips that I will share with you today, just for educational purposes only. So I don't know, you can go on my website, you can read my full disclaimer so that we know what's happening here. But yeah, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And this, like, you will have to do this is just like first step. Do this every time that you publish a blog post, anything. I always have a disclaimer that is, so that disclaimer. Maybe we can cut through this later.
Rachel asked a really good question, and I want to make sure that we answer it. I know that there's other people inside of certain niches as well that are going to have kind of similar questions. I'm also in the personal finance niche, Rachel, so you kind of beat me to this one. So what legal requirements need to be considered in the personal finance accounting/tax field? Is it enough to say that this is not financial/tax advice? Do we need to be careful about certain topics that we cover, or wording, or specific advice given to people? And I think that this could also apply to any kind of, like, if you ever say anything like homeopathic, or anything having to do with like children, anything having to do with herbal stuff, I guess really almost anything at all having to do with children or pets or anything like that. This is a question that a lot of people who give advice that has to do like with, is it fair to say like an intimate detail that they're giving advice on? Like if you're talking about like personal finance, that's about money. If you're talking about children, that's about another person. Like, so what kind of things do we need to be careful of?
There are some topics that are more, they called My Money, My Life, I think it's called, where even Google requires a certain ETA, which is like expertise, trustworthiness, and authority. So basically, when you blog, or you do YouTube videos, or when you offer tips about in a niche that is related to money, so finance, or legal, or health, because so anything that can affect someone's money or someone's life is more regulated, and you need to have like more stringent disclaimers in place, because you can really get in trouble. So you need to make sure that that's not legal or financial advice, but you also need to be careful in not giving that advice. So it's obviously having the disclaimers and telling people before any blog, whenever you write a blog post, at the top, the first thing you need to put is a disclaimer saying this is not financial/legal, whatever it is, advice. And then you need to have a link to a full disclaimers page where you actually go into details about what you cover, what you not. So saying, like, I'm not your accountant, or I'm not qualified to do this, I'm not qualified to do that, or I have this accreditation, but notwithstanding that, like, is this on this website, I'm not offering that. If you want, book a consultation where, like, you sign an agreement, and so you need to cover yourself, but you also need to be fair towards like your audience. And so don't give advice if you're not qualified to give advice. You can speak from your personal experience. So for example, what you do, Caroline, when you give advice about, like, your thrifting skills, that's good because you're not telling people buy this credit card or sign up for this. That's financial advice. That's only people that are qualified to do that, and only once they hire you in that capacity they give. But if you say, oh look, I went to this supermarket and was cheaper, and that's different. That's your experience. You can do that, but always disclose that is not, and disclaim your liability. So disclose that is not advice, and disclaim your liability. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you do that not only from a legal standpoint, but also for SEO, because Google will only rank websites that have a certain ETA, as I was saying, so expertise, trustworthy. So, for example, is Rachel an accountant? I seem to understand. Has she a background? So, if you have any kind of credentials, put them in your about page. So that, because then you will, like Google wants in your bio under your blog post, so that is clear that you're speaking. You know what you're talking about. It's not just a and this is not only for Google. Pinterest had the same problem that like it wasn't showing things that were health related or well-being or because it's really it's so delicate, like it's so
very tricky. It's tricky to find that middle ground, but I do like that you're allowed to talk about these things, especially from the stance of I did this. Feel free to try it, knowing that it is not financial advice, but I did this, and if you want to, go for it. So is there anything like, as far as like the content from these people, is there anything that they need to be really careful not to talk about? And I know that we're kind of painting with a broad brush here because we don't want to just talk about like taxes or just talk about health or just talk about legal. But is there anything under those kinds of topics that could get hung up,
Any topics related to this content, this type of, this area, these niches, can be a bit tricky. But at the same time, there are teachers, like if it's for educational purposes, as long as you tell that it's for educational purposes, and as long as you frame it as educational, you're not telling people like, okay, do this in your tax return. Like you can say, okay, for when you do a tax return, you will have to include this and that and that, and you explain how a tax return works, and then everyone will figure it out which one they will have to put in their own. It's not like they're saying do this, and then you give them one option because like you're giving a specific advice about their own circumstances. That's advice. When you go in, but if you're just teaching our tax return work, I mean, teaching is not, it's not forbidden,
Yes. I like that. Teaching is not necessarily giving advice.
And no, not at all.
Okay. So that, I think that puts me at ease as a personal finance person on the internet. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So that's why it's like informational, educational content is different from advice, where you go and consult with someone and say, do this, do that. So if in terms of like the example that we were doing, we were talking about earlier, I just don't go, you can quote all the different circumstances, but don't go specific and pass on someone and advising them what they should do.
It's a very important thing.
Actually, there is one thing that you can say specifically to them, and is consult with a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant in your specific jurisdiction. This is what I say. I always say, like, if you need advice, go to a lawyer.
Yes. If you need advice, talk to a lawyer. I am a lawyer.
To an accountant.
I am an accountant. I am not your accountant.
Exactly.
I'm a tax professional. I'm not your tax professional. It's a very important distinction to make there.